gods entered the attack. Most England batsmen would like to see leg spinners abolished. Fowler gone for 28, and England were 46 for 1, and that was the first over of leg spin. The second over of spin from Sivarama, the first ball to Robinson. Robinson caught behind for 22. England bamboozled by spin. What happened after lunch had all the hallmarks of the England collapse here 3 years ago. Gatting became the third victim of the 18-year-old leg spinner. David Gower never looked happy, and the very next ball, this time from Kapil Dev, saw England reeling at 78 for 4. That gave Kapil Dev his 249th Test wicket. Alan Lamb provided him with his 250th. .93 for 5. Lamb had made 9. When Ellison became the fourth batsman to fail to read Sivarama, 4 wickets had fallen in the space of 25 minutes. The only relief during an afternoon of gloom came from Phil Edmonds. His solution to the problems posed by the spinners was to smash them into the stands. The way he played, he deserved a half-century, and it took a blinding catch by Gaikwad to stop him.
Despite Edmonds
wearing his trilby. The first over from Cowans cost 12 runs. Gavaskar and Gaikwad scored 33 off the first 4 overs. But Cowans improved and broke the opening partnership with a valuable wicket of Gavaskar. Then England had a bit of luck as Ellison bowled to Gaikwad. Gaikwad out of his ground, and India were 59 for 2. Then India had their share of luck. Downton took the catch, but the umpire had called a no ball, and Amarnath survived. At lunch, India was 72 for 2. It would have been more for some superb fielding by Graham Fowler. Vengsarkar scored a double century against England at Rajkot. This afternoon, he blasted Cowans all round the ground, taking 16 off 1 over. India reached 100 at the rate of more than 5 and over. 8 of those runs came in boundaries. The batting was murderous. Cowans, who'd taken such a hammering, finally put an end to the onslaught. Lamb took the catch, and Vengsarkar was out for 34. Then it was the turn for the England spinners. First Pocock to Amarnath. A delighted Chris Cowdrey held on to the catch, and India were 156 for 4. Edmonds came on at the other end, and without adding to their score, India lost another wicket, Sandeep Patil. Chris Cowdrey won't forget his first over in Test cricket, his 4th ball to Kapil Dev.
And at the close, India were 2
against England, his 4th in Test matches. Encouraged by all this, Kamani went all out for his own century, and Lamb was only inches away. Mercifully, it came to an end with 2 balls from Pocock. Lamb took the catch, and Kamani had made 102. The next ball and almost an action replay. Shastri had made his highest test score of 142. India declared with a lead of 270. The day, which began so badly for England, ended on a dismal note as Kapil Dev bowled to Robinson. 3 for 1 and a mountain to climb. At the close, they were 37 for 1. It looks hopeless.
England are 233 behind.
Approached the massive task of saving the match with great control and good sense, punishing the bad balls on the way to his first Test 50 in India. Fowler played an equally vital part. Though always looking less certain, he too picked up a personal half-century as their stand moved well past the 100 mark. Then suddenly all that England had built came crashing down in a few cyclonic overs. Shiva at last outfoxed Fowler, fatally padding up. 7 runs later, Vengsarkar swooped like a vulture to gobble up Gower, though the captain hardly seemed enchanted by umpire Swaroop's weighty decision. Next over, Lamb was stumped for 1, and once again Laxman Sivaramakrishna's leg spin was proving as unreadable as his name. England now 152 for 4. Remarkably, Gatting rose above it all to carve out his endlessly awaited first Test century. It had taken him 31 matches, an agonizing 54 innings to achieve. But at last, he'd shaken off the shackles of unfulfilled talent. Gatting had scored 136 when his admirable restraint finally deserted him, and he was sunk by Sandeep in the deep. His innings, the one real consolation for a side now condemned to defeat.
India's hero was their young leg spinner, whose name I can't pronounce.
Shiva Ramakrishnan, the 18-year-old leg spinner playing his first Test in India, was still at work. A catch or LBW, nobody seemed quite sure, but Downton was out for 62. In the end, we were told it was LBW. The last wicket, the next ball, and Shiva still hadn't finished his amazing performance. The end of Cowan's, the end of England. India wanted just 48 to win. Shiva Ramakrishnan, the young man from Madras, had taken 12 for 181. India had played 31 Test matches without a win, and they gave the crowd a few shocks on the way to winning this one. That was Gaikwad stumped by Downton, 5 for 1. And with Cowan steaming in, Gavaskar was out to one of the finest catches ever taken by David Gower. 7 for 2, captain dismissed by captain. Mahinder Amarnath hit the winning runs to give his side victory by 8 wickets. The last Test match they won was here in Bombay 3 years ago.
100. After a miserable start to the tour, England badly needed their first win. They couldn't have begun better. Gavaskar, the captain, bowled by Foster for naught. But England's bowlers were then made to suffer, Vengsarkar and Srikanth piling on the runs. Vengsarkar's 100 was greeted ecstatically by the crowd of over 50,000. India made 214 in their 45 overs. England's out-of-form batsmen were up against it. They needed a solid start, but they didn't get one. Fowler, Robinson and Lamb all going cheaply. David Gower, injured while fielding, was batting down the order. He made just 3. But Mike Gatting, a centurion in the first Test, was on his way to another 100.
That's through the gap. That's it.
England had victory in sight, clearly something that upset India's volatile supporters. Missiles were thrown and play was held up for 20 minutes. But first with Marks, then with Downton, Gatting steered England home with 4 wickets and 10 balls to spare.
The Indian batsmen for just over 200 runs. As Michael Blakey reports, England's spinners did most of the damage.
Pocock in his second over beat Gaikwad all ends up. India were 56 for 2. And with spin at both ends, Edmonds tempted Vengsarkar down the wicket. And this time, Paul Downton, who missed Shaftesbury in the first test, made no mistake. Sandeep Patil started slowly, but responded to barracking from a section of the crowd. His partnership with Amarnath was just beginning to develop when Edmonds beat him through the air. Pocock had plenty of time to think about the catch, but that was 129 for 4. And then a tremendous wicket for England as Pocock bowled to Shastri, who made 142 in Bombay. Half the side out for 131 and a 4th wicket to the spinners. And by tea, India had lost 6 wickets. Once again, the spin of Pocock did the damage. Ellison didn't take a wicket in the first test, but this morning, with the 3rd ball of his first over, he removed the most prolific scorer in Test cricket. Gavaskar caught behind for 1, and India were 3 for 1. Edmonds, bowling in a golfing cap, was brought into the attack in the first hour, and India reached 50 without further loss. Pocock came on at the other end, and in his second over beat Gaikwad all ends up. India were 56 for 2. And with spin at both ends, Edmonds tempted Vengsarkar down the wicket. And this time, Paul Downton, who missed Shaftesbury in the first test, made no mistake. Vengsarkar had made 24, and at 68 for 3, the game was swinging England's way. Sandeep Patil started slowly, but responded to barracking from a section of the crowd. His partnership with Amarnath was just beginning to develop when Edmonds beat him through the air. Pocock had plenty of time to think about the catch, but that was 129 for 4. And then a tremendous wicket for England as Pocock bowled to Shastri, who made 142 in Bombay. Half the side out for 131 and a 4th wicket to the spinners. And by tea, India had lost 6 wickets. Once again, the spin of Pocock did the damage. Amarnath out for 42. England had the upper hand with India on 140 for 6. India survived the last 2 hours without losing a wicket, but England's opener, Tim Robinson, had to go to hospital for x-rays after he took the full force of a drive by Kapil Dev on his wrist. At the close, India were 208 for 6. Ellison began today in the same spectacular way as yesterday. This was his second ball to Kapil Dev, who'd made 60. Ellison again, this time to Kamani, who scored a century in Bombay. Gatting's catch gave Ellison his 3rd wicket. Ellison bowled from the other end and came round the wicket to Prabhakar. The ploy worked, and India were 258 for 9. The last pair put on 49 before Lam ran out Shivarama. And India, who'd been in trouble twice during the innings, had made 307. England desperately wanted a decent start. They didn't get one as Prabhakar, playing his first test, bowled to Fowler. Gaikwad took the catch round his boot laces. England were in trouble at 15 for 1. Mike Gatting scored centuries in his last 3 matches, but he was out in the most unfortunate way. He played the ball, which then rolled back into his stumps. What looked like a fine recovery ended with England on 60 for 2.
At the close,
The morning session began splendidly for England, with Alan Lamb coming back into form. He scored only 10 runs in the Bombay test, but this morning he looked more like the man who scored 3 centuries against West Indies during the summer. Then everything went sour with 2 umpiring decisions that will no doubt feature in the next captain's report. First, Lamb was given out. Caught Vengsarkar bowled Yadav. Lamb had made 52. He looked distinctly unhappy and feels he didn't hit the ball. On the stroke of noon, David Gow was given out LBW of the bowling Shiva Ramakrishna. Gow had made only 5, and England had collapsed to 181 for 4. The ball did keep low, but hit Gow on the front foot outside leg stump. So once again, dubious umpiring decisions have had an enormous influence on a test match, and more ammunition for the argument for neutral umpires. Chris Cowdery set off like a rocket. He smashed 33 runs in a 50 partnership with Robinson and looked in tremendous form. But he too went to the third consecutive controversial umpiring decision. He was given out, caught Gavaskar off the bowling of Shivarama Krishnan. He looked absolutely amazed. A similar thing happened to him in Bombay. From the slow-motion replay, it certainly looked as though the ball hit his boot, not the bat. But that was 237 for 5. But Robinson was still there, as safe as the Rock of Gibraltar. He looked every inch a test match opening batsman. Robinson's 100 came up after just over 6 hours. And he scored it in only his second test match. Fine consolation after being given out twice in the Bombay test by more doubtful decisions. When Robinson hit Shivarama for 4, England had passed the Indian total. And at the close, they had a lead of 30 runs, with Robinson at 157.
Robinson had just begun his third day at the crease when Kapil Dev produced a real snorter of a ball to end his long and epic innings on 160. For the second time in the series, Paul Downton improved his highest test score, hitting a splendid 70. But then Shivarama Krishnan, who seemed to have been tamed, came twirling back to tweak off England's tail. Edmonds went swinging high and wild. And when Ellison was blown out, England had thrown away their last 4 wickets for just 20 runs. But England's lead of 111 still looked good as Cowans had Prabhakar caught behind for 5. Then, with the score on 15, Cowans blasted out Vensarkar as well, and England must have caught a whiff of victory. Amarnath's attitude suggested any talk of an Indian defeat was far too premature as he cracked on to an impressive half-century. Jeremy Thompson...
Gets better and better. He's yet to fail out here. He shared a 50 partnership with Edmonds and reached his highest test score of 74. But England needed to accelerate the scoring rate. Edmonds took up the challenge with his long-handled bat. And Shastri's catch gave Shivarama Krishnan his 3rd wicket. Downton looked well set for a maiden test century, but took one chance too many off Shivarama. And the amazing little leg spinner continued his phenomenal run of success against England. First Pocock, and then Ellison. So for the 3rd time in 3 innings, Shivarama had taken 6 wickets. England had scored 418, a lead of 111. They couldn't have hoped for a better start. Cowan softened up Prabhakar with 2 bouncers and then beat him with sheer pace. And that was 12 for 1. Cowan's next over, and he was bowling as well as at any stage of the tour. And that was 15 for 2, and England were in a position to win the match and square the series. But Mohinder Amarnath turned the course of the match with a brilliant attacking innings of 56 not out. And Gavaskar livened up the end of the day, smashing Pocock for 14 in 1 over. At the close, India were 128 for 2, a lead of 17. So with 1 day left, it looks like the...
1-1 and ends England's record run of 13 matches without a win. Michael Blakey reports from Delhi.
The last day began with a draw looking the most likely result, but as England's spinners worked their way through India's batsmen, it turned into a real thriller. That was Amarnath completely deceived by Edmonds. Pocock too was bowling beautifully. Gavaskar gave himself all the room in the world. And that was effectively 61 for 4. 3 wickets fell in the space of 15 minutes. When Edmonds dismissed Gaikwad, India had 3 wickets left, and the lead was 105, and England win was on the cards. Kamani, the hero of the Bombay test, didn't stay long. 8 down and 2 to go. Nobody was leaving this match. Then yet another umpiring rumpus. With Yadav at the crease, Cowdery first flung himself full length to what he thought was a catch, and then he flung the ball to the ground in disgust as Mr. Dotiwala said no once again. Yadav scored only 1, but stayed around for 40 minutes. No doubt there, as Lamb gave Edmonds his 4th wicket. And when Pocock wrapped it up with the wicket of Shivarama, England needed 125 to win, with 59 minutes and 20 overs of play left. Then Robinson, eager for runs and desperate for victory, made a rare mistake. Run out by Vensarkar for 18 with a score at 41. Fowler didn't last much longer, and once again it was Shivarama who struck. And that was 68 for 2. With 9 overs left and only 8 runs required, Gavaskar conceded defeat by coming on to bowl. Lamb clouted the ball into the crowd, and that left 2 to win. No problem for Lamb, and a win for England by 8 wickets. So for the first time for 2 years, the players were able to celebrate a win abroad. After all their problems off the field and their difficulties with umpires on the field, they had good reason to look happy. The spinners, Phil Edmonds and Pat Pocock, had taken 8 wickets between them and set up the victory. And there was no doubt about the feelings of David Gower.
Tremendous, tremendous. It's far more pleasant to be in this position than trying to console ourselves after defeat again. We've done enough of that, I think, over the years. We've had enough of those problems. We've tried to do it rather well, but we've now got the added bonus of being in a winning position. If you hear some background noise in this interview, that means we're happy.
The Indians began well. Their openers, Shrikant and Shastri, put on 188. And Shrikant in particular was in sparkling form until Gatting got him out LBW for 99. Shastri made 102, and at the end of their 50 overs, India had reached 252. England started badly, losing Robinson for 1, but once again Mike Gatting turned the tide. He made 59 in characteristically swashbuckling style, while at the other end Graham Fowler never looked happy, and in the gathering gloom he was out caught at mid-wicket for 15. Eventually it got so dark, one commentator suggested the batsman must be playing by smelling the ball rather than by seeing it. But by then England had secured victory by virtue of a faster scoring rate. England are now 2-0 up in the 5-match series.
Jeremy Thompson.
A crowd of 80,000, the biggest of the tour, packed Calcutta's Eden Gardens to see an Indian team full of conflict face an England side now full of confidence. The change in fortune soon showed when Cowans had Gaikwad caught behind for 18. Sunny Gavaskar, the captain at the centre of India's personality problems, was appearing in his 88th consecutive test, though it was the only record he looked likely to set today. Phil Edmonds soon outsmarted him, taking a wicket in his first over. Gatting's catch making it 35 for 2. India had scratched together only 47 by lunch when the more aggressive Amarnath took over, adding 91 with Venksacker in the next 2 hours. But Edmonds' bowling, both shrewd and mean, never let the situation get out of control. He lured Amarnath into a leg trap sprung by Cowdrey. And 1 run later, Venksacker, who'd patiently pushed his way to 48, was left rooted to the spot as Edmonds bowled him round his legs. It took a while for the umpires to convince him what had happened.
Venksacker is looking at the leg umpire. Leg umpire says, yes, it was bowled.
Ravi Shastri offered the only forceful shots in a tense final session as England's fielding proved as tight as their bowling. The batsman never really looked comfortable, and Azharuddin in his maiden test was lucky not to have been stumped by Downton off Pocock. These days England like to take their chances. On this hazy Bengal afternoon, India clung on to finish at 168 for 4 as Phil Edmonds helped England to see out the old year on a highly professional note. Jeremy Thompson, ITN Sport, India.
Owe their strong position to a young batsman making his first Test appearance.
Playing in front of a crowd of 85,000 people, Mohammad Azharuddin, a 21-year-old bank clerk, showed no nerves at all as he joined the select band of cricketers who've scored a century on their Test debut. He scored 150 for young India against England in Ahmedabad. And that took him to his first century for the Test side. It took him just over 6 hours and 20 minutes. No doubt there'll be many more. And Shastri, who scored 100 in Bombay, followed by another in the one-day match in Cuttack, went on to a third century, his 5th in Test cricket. And then came England's only success of the day. Gower's catch meant India were 341 for 5. Azharuddin had made 110. At the close, India had added a further 7 runs without loss. So, with 2 days left, it looked certain to end as a draw.
In the Welsh, when Gavaskar refused to declare, thus guaranteeing that the match would end in a draw.
The innings of Ravi Shastri, which had spread over 4 days, came to an end this morning. The score was then 356 for 6, but Gavaskar, India's captain, insisted on batting on. Kamani hit Pocock for 6 and then repeated the shot only to find Fowler. 407 for 7, but Gavaskar still wouldn't declare. After lunch, Gower showed his disapproval by coming on to bowl, and Edmonds staged a one-man protest in the middle of the ground. And Gavaskar, at odds with Kapil Dev, lost even more support. Gower continued with a version of off-spin bowling, backed up with some theatrical appeals to the umpire. Eventually, the combined protests of the players and the crowd brought about the declaration at 437 for 7. Edmonds is not a man to hide his feelings. Fearing trouble, the pitch was under guard as England's openers came out to bat in this unwinnable and now meaningless match. Play was held up for 10 minutes as some of the 80,000 spectators hurled fruit at the players. It's fortunate that's all they threw. Gower came in after Robinson had to leave the field with eye trouble, but he didn't last long, scoring just 19. And Fowler was one short of his half-century when he fell to Shiva Rama Krishnan.
In the match. At the end, India barely had time to get their second innings underway, and they again came in for abuse from the crowd. But the spectators did enjoy an all-round performance from England's Alan Lamb, some of it unconventional.
It was Lamb, the run-maker, who saved England from the indignity of the follow-on, playing the same kind of innings as Gatting had done earlier. The century-maker Shastri took another helping from the spectators who'll never forget Gavaskar's delayed declaration yesterday, which killed any hopes of a result. This time it was Lamb, the peacemaker, with Gavaskar. It was revealed today that Gavaskar declared after receiving a note from the police commissioner advising him that if he didn't, there'd be a riot. Then it was Lamb the disappointed, as he was out when a century looked on the cards. Next it was Lamb the clown, with his one-man show for a crowd of 80,000 people who'd been starved of real entertainment. And when India batted again, a most unlikely role for Lamb. Lamb the bowler, the batsman Prabhakar. That was Lamb's first test wicket, which rounded off an amazing day for the South African player who'd entertained, amused and then surprised.
The action at the start of the fourth test in Madras, in sharp contrast to the slow play which caused a near riot in Calcutta. England bowled out India for 272, with Neil Foster taking 6 wickets for 104. Michael Blakey reporting.
Foster began his best ever test performance with the wicket of Gavaskar. The captain had made all of India's 17 runs. By mid-morning, India had collapsed to 45 for 3. Foster's second wicket and Vengsarkar had made 17. Amarnath led the recovery. After the desperately slow run rate in Calcutta, India's batsmen were playing as they might in a one-day match. They kept up a rate of about 4 runs an over. Amarnath scored 78 before Foster struck once more. He'd taken 3 of the first 4 wickets. After his mammoth innings in Calcutta, Shastri's appearance was brief. A 4th wicket then for Foster. By now he was bowling faster than ever. Wicket number 5 in his first test match of the tour. And he rounded off an unforgettable day with the wicket of Shiva Rama Krishnan. At that stage he'd taken 6 for 97. Cowans finished off the innings with Chetan Sharma at the wicket. Lamb took the catch and India were all out for 272. At the close, England had replied with 32 without loss.
Here.
Highest test score. Well supported by Mike Gatting, he saw England overtake India's first innings total with 9 wickets still standing. Mike Blakey reports.
Fowler batted all day, scoring his 3rd test century. And with Robinson at the other end, the two men set about establishing a record-opening partnership for England against India.
They were helped by two rare mistakes by India's wicketkeeper, Kermani. That was Robinson's only escape, but Fowler had been missed twice before going on to reach his own 50, and with it the century partnership. And Robinson wasn't far behind, reaching his half-century of Shiva Rama Krishnan. There's speculation that Fowler may have to make way for Gooch next season, but not if he plays like he did today. But he had more than his share of luck. On 75, he was dropped for the third time. He battled on, and yet another fall brought up a record-opening partnership for England against India of 160. Surely England must now win this match. India's only success was the wicket of Robinson when it scored 74. And that was 178 for 1. But Fowler, now supported by Gatting, played on, reaching his century thanks to 4 overthrows. At the end of the second day, England had passed India's first innings score, and they lead by 21 runs with 9 wickets standing.
Pop singer Bob Geldof has wound up
to go 2-1 up in the Test series against India after record-breaking performances by Graham Fowler and Mike Gatting in the 4th Test in Madras. Both batsmen completed double centuries, a first for England in the same innings, and also established a record-breaking partnership for the second wicket. Blakey reports.
It's been a day long overdue when England's batsmen have been rewriting the record books with a vengeance. First, Graham Fowler, in a cavalier mood, making the highest score ever made by an Englishman in India, a record which was broken just hours later. Gatting brought up the 200 partnership, another record in India. Then Gatting, who'd never scored a Test century before this tour, made his second of the series. With that safely in the bag, he celebrated, taking the score to 400 with a 6. Fowler, who'd been there for over 9 hours, reached his double century off Shastri. Then, 1 run later, the innings was over. 201. And a record partnership with Gatting against India of 241. The punishment of the bowlers continued as Gatting brought up the 500 in the same dramatic way he'd taken England to 400. He powered his way to a double century in typical fashion. And that's the first time 2 Englishmen have scored a double century in the same Test innings. And it meant he'd stolen Fowler's brief moment of glory. But he was out after scoring 207. At the close, England had reached the massive score of 611 for 5, a lead of 339. It's the rest day tomorrow, then England have 2 more days to win the match and take the lead in the series.
Score, and as Michael Blakey reports, they were soon in trouble.
Neil Foster gave England what should have been a match-winning start. First, Gavaskar, who'd scored only 3 runs. Then Foster, who took 6 wickets in the first innings, removed Vengsarkar. (19 for 2). And Foster took his 3rd wicket in 18 deliveries when Srikanth went with a score on 22. It could have been 4 down as Amarnath went for a 6. Foster was waiting on the boundary. Then came the recovery, with Azharuddin and Amarnath building a 4th wicket partnership of 190. Amarnath reached his half-century first, followed closely by Azharuddin. Armanath scored a magnificent 95 before becoming Foster's 10th victim of the match. Azharuddin, who scored a century on his debut in Calcutta, went on to another century in his second match. At the close, with Shastri looking dangerous, India was still 134 runs behind with 6 wickets left. England should win tomorrow, but it's been a series full of surprises, and India could still escape with a draw.
Michael Blakey. And now
the fourth test against India in Madras to go 2-1 up in the series with 1 match to play. But India's batsmen salvaged some pride by avoiding an innings defeat, and a record-equalling last wicket partnership ensured England had to bat again. They knocked off the runs for the loss of Fowler to win by 9 wickets. Azharuddin had added only 2 to his overnight score of 103 when Pocock struck just the early blow England needed. Gower turned down the new ball, opting for spin. He was proved right when Ravi Shastri fell to Edmonds. Of all the Indian batsmen, Shastri had looked the best equipped to spend all day at the crease. With him gone, India were in deep trouble, but Saeed Kermani soon proved there was life left in the Indians. And Kapil Dev too was in no mood for surrender. The pair put on 82 in just 74 minutes. Cowans was recalled with the new ball and soon put an end to Kapil's brief but boisterous innings. Neil Foster also returned and soon trapped Shiva Rama, Foster's 11th wicket of the match. He looks a fine replacement for Bob Willis. Yadav went soon after lunch, 1 wicket left and an innings victory beckoning for England. When the end came, courtesy of Edmonds, Kermani and Sharma had made England bat again, their last wicket partnership equalling the record against England. With stacks of time left, England needed just 33 to win, but Fowler, who made 200 in the first innings, this time made just 2. But that was the only fright for England, Robinson and Gatting finishing the job. The winning runs were hit by Robinson. An historic victory for England. They need only a draw in the last test to become the first English side to win an overseas series since the tour to Australia in 1978 and 79. David Gower was understandably delighted.
A number of gentlemen played very well indeed. I think you have to give immense credit to people like Graham Fowler and Mike Gatting for their batting. And Neil Foster, especially with the ball. I mean, his tally of wickets in this match was tremendous to see, having just included him in the side for this game. And then put it down to a team effort. We've worked very well together. We've kept working throughout the test. Once we were so many runs ahead, that put us in a very, very good position.
Well, probably were content to play for a draw.
David Gower opened the batting after making 78 in the first innings, and England refused to take any risks. The captain was happy enough with a draw, which would win them the series, which began with defeat in Bombay. Mike Gatting finished the tour, which has been a personal triumph, by completing 1,000 runs, and the game ended in a draw. So England made history by becoming the first touring side to come from behind to win a series in India. A fine achievement for a team which left home more in hope than expectation. And David Gower was so overcome, he even dropped the trophy.
It's very hard to put it into words, I suppose, but it's been a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
We've thankfully disproved our critics. We've proved to people in India that we are a side that can play cricket. I'm delighted we've come out on top. As I say, the lads we've had here have worked very hard. They've practiced well. They've worked as a team. Yes. And that's been the secret.
Just 6 months ago, England's cricketers were down and out. Whitewashed by the West Indies, England's batsmen simply had no answer to the fearsome pace. In India, England faced nothing like this, but that's not the only reason for the resurgence. For once, the selectors got it right, particularly their decision to plump for the spinning pair, 37-year-old Pat Pocock and Phil Edmonds, something of a rebel and long ignored because of it. On India's turning wickets, they played a crucial part in England's success. Then the Gatting factor. Many people thought he shouldn't have gone, let alone as vice-captain. A test flop, he'd never made a century in top-class cricket. But Mike Gatting came good, hammered the Indian bowlers, and now looks ready to take on the Australians this summer. Another plus, team morale. They started the tour as underdogs, lost the first test, then received a torrent of criticism and advice from a frustrated press and public. But morale stayed high. Unlike other tours, any celebrations weren't soured by reports of mischief and damaging personality disputes. which raises the question of Ian Botham. England's #1 cricketer took the winter off. He displayed his sporting skills of another kind.
On a baking Trinidad morning, it seems